Good afternoon. Stephen K. Bannon should be here, but this is Brad Thayer sitting in for him on August 28th, the year of our Lord, 2024. We've got a lot to cover on the show. We have some excellent guests, including Congressman Tim Burchett, of course, from the great state of Tennessee. And we'll be joined later by Jim Fanell and Derek Harvey, two of our great national security experts who are going to talk us through key national security threats that are facing the U.S. and its allies now and certainly in the months to come. Much is happening. As we used to say, of course, lots happening in international politics, and business is always good. And our enemies always ensure that there's never a shortage of problems or issues really to touch base on. But I'd like to toss to Congressman Burchett. Sir, if you're with us, there's a lot to discuss.
Sir. Great to have you. Great to be on the show with y'all. Thank you again.
Wonderful to have you, sir. You're a favorite, of course, of the audience. The posse loves you. Congressman Burchett, I'd like to really start off with talking about the vice presidential pick, Tim Walz, who's Democratic vice presidential pick, of course, sir, who's spent a lot of time in China, it seems, maybe too much time in China, some would say. Having made over 30 visits since 1989, having gone to Macau many, many times, and have had business interests as well with PRC, People's Republic of China's entities there. So, sir, what can you tell us about this vice presidential pick, and what are your thoughts really on what he's up to in the years that he's had before obviously Kamala Harris picked him?
Well, if you want somebody with a questionable past, abortion on demand up to and maybe even after birth. If you want somebody who wants an open border, who said that you build that wall, I'm going to be down there selling ladders, then this is your guy. And of course, the communist Chinese influence to me scares the daylights out of me. They are the ones that have worked their magic with another member of our former member, I guess, of the Intelligence Committee that Speaker Pelosi would not put on the committee, or that would put on the committee and would not remove him, and who couldn't get a security briefing to a Boy Scout meeting, and was, of course, had a long-term relationship with a communist Chinese lady. So, they have a long-term plan. They get involved in people's lives early. I was told by Mike Pompeo at a breakfast one time, he said, Tim, they're down to the level of PTA meetings. I mean, in areas, that's their influence. And they cast the net very deep, and they're playing the long game. And my father, I always point to these guns behind me. Those were guns my dad took off of folks that he killed in the Pacific. And I got 3 of them, as a matter of fact. But he, after the war, he went to China for a short while, and he got in some limited combat against some Chinese communists, left a group of them in a field, as a matter of fact. That's for another story, though, another day. But, the thing that he said about the communist Chinese was that they don't value people. They don't value anything but the ruling class. And they'll do anything to succeed. And that scares the heck out of me. The Manchurian Candidate, we know they're involved in these things. They are at major colleges, major institutions, our research institutions. And what they do is, a lot of these folks are very patriotic Americans of Chinese descent, but they still have kinfolk back in China, and they'll be contacted about a member or something, a member of their family who could just disappear. And they say, oh, man, I don't want that to happen. And they say, well, that's good. That's fine. Why don't you, we just need a little information. Maybe you work maybe you're a member of the Navy or something, have a little influence or information on a naval, on a missile that we have or something, or a sub. And that's the way they've operated in the past. They got two that's Freudian. They got two Chinese members of our Navy of Chinese descent. And basically, I think one of them's mom was promised a position in the Chinese party. I don't know what that entails. Probably having at least one meal a day, which is something that a lot of people in China do without. But, it goes very deep with these folks, and they have a long game. And, do they have compromising information on him? I don't know. I would suspect they don't, but they do have some influence, and they have a contact with him. And that scares the daylights out of me, and that should scare every American, because currently, right now, our national media outside of, when I say national media, I mean the historical ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN. They're not doing any research on these folks. They're coronating them is all they're doing, and that should scare the hell out of Americans.
Indeed, it should. And anybody who's gone to China 30 times, he wouldn't be coming back if he at least didn't get the approval of the Chinese Communist Party,
Yes,
because he's not allowed to just come and go as he wants.
We should talk to our missionaries. We should talk to some of our Christian missionaries that go over there and ask them about the process to get over there and what they have to do, and they have to be very careful. And then to say that this guy just has free reign to walk all over China 30 different times, to me, and bring young students, to me, it doesn't make your mind, doesn't have to wander very far to figure this thing out.
Yes, sir. And he had a business, too, which really seems to be opaque. And what actually was this business doing in China? I think Congressman Burchett, there are going to be a lot of shoes yet to drop, I think, in Tim Walz and his activities with the Chinese Communist Party, the time that he spent in Macau, for example. There's a lot there, and it's up to him, of course, to come clean. He's very unlikely to, so it's up to Congress and other good folks to do what they can to get information about him. I know your committee, the Chairman Comer's committee, has attempted to send a recent letter to the FBI. Congressman, could you talk a little bit about that, please, for the audience?
Yeah, I guess the letter you reference is just how deep his influence is, and where it goes, and I don't expect to get anything back. We've seen this time and time again, that our alphabet agencies just do not respond, or as we saw with the Secret Service after President Trump was shot, just how they stonewalled, and how our FBI's they allowed the body to be cremated, and then they couldn't wash off that root fast enough. If these folks, all in these agencies, aren't involved in some sort of conspiracy, they sure don't do a heck of a lot to bring anything to light to dispel those rumors. So I'm very concerned, and I do not expect any response. I expect stonewalling, and hoping that they will have the majority in the House, the Senate, and the White House, because when they do, God help us, they will destroy this country. Because these radical views and programs, and our transportation bill, where 85% of it funds non-transportation. That will just be the tip of the iceberg, and they will wreck this country, and they will rebuild it in some sort of woke-utopia, as my buddy Matt Gaetz calls it, and we will lose our country as we know it. I fear that completely with this. And to think that the ruling body that I serve on, and Chairman Comer does a good job. He goes after him, but I see the frustration every time I see him in the gym every morning before 7 o'clock usually, and you can tell he's just frustrated because there's no apparatus to back it up. We've got a majority, but we don't have enough members with the guts to do something. We ought to just say we're going to cut your money off and defund these agencies and let them fall into something else. And that's what we need to do. And I think the American public, at least I know the posse, would support that. But we're just being overrun, and the arrogance, they're just thumbing their nose at this committee, and they sure wouldn't do it under the Democrats. if the Republicans were in charge and or in the White House. As you saw, they ran over our Constitution continuously when Trump was in, and they had the power in the House. So I don't think much is going to come from it, brother. I guess I should have just said that. I saved us a lot of time.
Well, it's important to say that. I think, Congressman, to convey to the audience, of course, what's actually happening, but also potential roads ahead, too. I think one thing that we could see is that it's not an accident there's so little time to investigate Waltz or Harris, of course, too. Since we only have a few months, voting starts in North Carolina and Pennsylvania in September. So they're doing everything they can to minimize the time that anybody has to look at these candidates and what they've been up to, sir, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. They're going to stonewall us, minimize, as you said. That's a great word. And the national media will play a part in it. I hate to do this, but before I go to bed, I flipped on the television, usually to get over to YouTube to watch some video on how to do something here that I need. Hey, if you need cataract surgery, I'm your guy, by the way. I saw a video on it. I'll probably be working on that later today outside of rebuilding carburetors. But no, I saw CNN, some round table, and they had the token Republican. I guess I didn't know who he was. Thought that was kind of odd that I wouldn't know who the guy was. But it's just a round table of far leftists just berating everything we stand for and making excuses for Kamala Harris and her vice president. After it came out that now she's in favor of a border wall. Of course she's in favor of a border. Who wouldn't be? And it's all of a sudden this talk, and she was for defunding the border, our border police, our border patrol, excuse me, and she fought every ounce of effort to build a wall. She is a liar. This is a hoax. This is being pushed upon us. Somebody else is pulling the strings. I dare say she is not going to be, if she were elected, God help us, but if she were, she would not be running anything. But I do take her serious when she says she's going to immediately have an immediate gun ban and start seizing weapons. I believe she'll try to do that and I believe that this gutless Congress will enough of them will stand. Will compromise some way on our Constitution, and then it is all over.
Well, yes, Congressman, you'll remember, of course, that Joe Biden, just as he was sworn in, right, had so many executive orders ready to go. So there's no doubt that if she were elected, she'll be off to the races. And guns are just the start of it, sir, as you certainly. It's going to be the continuation of the remaking of American society. Which is the objective here. And there's so much, obviously, to be done. But how are we going to be able to get the information about her, Congressman? I think that the letters are important. The interviews to which she's going to sit down, it's going to be up to President Trump, certainly at the debate, or at least one debate, potentially more, to try to draw this out. You referenced the media, of course, our inner camp, aren't going to do anything. So sadly, it falls to President Trump at the debate to do his utmost to try to draw her out on this issue. Other than that, she's just going to be a Biden hide-in-the-basement strategy, and the media will provide top cover for her, sir, don't you think? It's a huge problem.
Again, 100%, you ought to be doing the press for the Republican caucus or just Americans that have some common sense. And I want to stress this with Americans, because these are the people that are watching this show. If I could branch out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
When you're at lunch, or you're at your garden club, or you're in your Sunday school class, or you're at the, getting a cold drink at work, and people are talking and they're saying something that is not right, you should correct them. You don't have to be a jerk about it, but you should correct them. You should stand up for this country. The left is taking full advantage of us on Facebook, on Twitter or X or whatever for too long, and we're too afraid to take it up, take them on. I would direct people to a Twitter thing I just posted. Somebody that's always attacking me every week in our daily newspaper here in Knoxville every week, and I ignore it because coming from the source, I know what it's about. They want to try to control me, and they held a fundraiser for me, and so now they think they can tell me what to do, which they can't. And then they write this horrible opinion piece every week about me. Well, this week though, or last week, they said some unkind things and some downright lies, actually, about my father, who actually fought for this country. He was in the Marine Corps, went in the Pacific. And I corrected them, and I put it out. I didn't send it to the paper because, they limit you to 160 words or something, and they edit it out, and they make me look like a bigger buffoon than I actually am. And then they'll post it like in the corner of the obituary page, and nobody reads the paper anymore anyway. So I posted it to Twitter. And as of today, I've gotten over 300,000 people that have viewed that thing, and that's across the country. And granted, people, a lot of the local, they're not all local people, but national people have said, I'm glad, I don't know who this is, but I'm glad you stood up to them. And we've got to do that. And we've got to encourage our preachers in the pulpit to quit being afraid to preach the gospel, for goodness sake, because a lot of this stuff, I don't want to be proselytizing, trying to win any souls, but dadgummit, a lot of this stuff is basics. It's scripture, and it's sound, and it's like our Constitution. It's not a moving document. It is a stone put in place for a purpose. And when we don't back our preachers up, and we don't back our community leaders up, and I dare say the people in the posse are great. I'm out knocking on doors in my counties, out in the rural areas. People are coming up to me. I see you on the posse. I was vacationing down in Florida a couple of weeks. Well, actually, I went down for Matt Gates, actually. And we took a couple of days. I took my girls down there with me. And the guy who was playing the guitar in the little honky tonk we go to every time, and I'll think of his name about the time I hang up here. But he, I think LaMonica, I believe is his name. Yeah, LaMonica. Anyway, he's a good guitar player. I sent him a $10 tip on Venmo or whatever, and y'all know how cheap I am. But he came off the stage and said, "Hey, brother, I've seen you on the posse. I just saw you today." As a matter of fact, because I was wearing the same dadgum shirt. And he said, and that meant more to me because he talked about things I was for, and he encouraged me. Yeah. But we need to do that of our elected officials. Take every advantage. You can blast them all you want, and they need to be blasted. But when they do something right, dadgummit, let them know. I've been in this game most of my life. I don't need any pats on the back, but a lot of these guys and gals do. I used to say if you get 3 phone calls on an issue, it was a groundswell. I voted against the Tennessee Titans stadium. I just didn't think government ought to be in that business. It's such a great deal for all these billionaires. Then dadgummit, they ought to just pool all their money and not make the taxpayers pay for it. And I was one of 3 people in the House and the Senate at that time in Tennessee to vote against it. But I had 3 or 5 or 6 maybe. But I had 3 people from my district had called me specifically about that. Said, "Hey, I can't even get books in our kids' schools and those kind of things." And we gotta back these people up, but we also gotta encourage people to get out and vote, because the left has perpetuated this myth, and they've used this because we think the elections were stolen. And they say, "What does my vote matter?" Folks, we got to put so many dadgum points on the board they can't steal it from us. We got to reinforce this thing. This country is a gift from God. If you travel overseas, brother, you'll see it. It is all these countries. You got to go here, you got to go there. Man, I wouldn't trade any of them for right here in this beautiful country. I got a 48-star flag on the wall in my office in Knoxville, and that was the flag that was on my uncle's casket. Too old to go fight, died a few days after D-Day. He was in his 30s. My mama would cry every time they played the national anthem. And I think about that, the sacrifices people have made. Let's not throw it away. Let's, I had a preacher one time tell me he was, there's a story, and I love this story, because the guy's on his roof, and and he's falling off, and he says, "Lord, help me." And then the nail catches his overalls, and And he says, never mind, Lord, I got it. And, knowing that God, if he knows when a sparrow falls from the sky, dadgummit, he put that nail there. So, man, he's put a lot of things out there. We got to quit turning our head to him and swatting his hand away. I think when President Trump turned his head a quarter of an inch and that bullet grazed him, that was a signal. We should all be aware and quit swatting God's hand away. Trump is not perfect. He is a just like the rest of us. He's a broken vessel, but dadgummit, he's gonna straighten this thing out. We just got to give him the opportunity to do it.
That's right, sir. And we want to keep in mind, even Ted Williams didn't get on base every time he came up to bat, right? So nobody's perfect.
333 or something. Yeah. But a third of the time he got on base. The rest of the time he just struck out.
Absolutely. And so President Trump has a batting average even better than Ted Williams. But as Steve always says, we can't put it on President Trump's shoulders. As you said at the beginning, sir, that it's up to every one of us to work to make sure that the election obviously goes the right way on November 5th. There's so much to be done. And again, early voting starting in September in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. So, sir, we're off to the races here in just a matter of weeks. And that's something that the audience, I'm sure, will keep in mind. Sir, is there anything, we got about 2 minutes left, just your final thoughts, really, on the events of today and on the vice presidential pick?
Well, I would just how far to the left they are, how far to the left. And I think they understand they're in trouble with the left because if they got to shore that bunch up, then we know they're in trouble with them. I think victory is within our grasp if we could just close our hands and pull it in. And I would encourage people. People ask me, what can they do for our country? Pray for our country and vote. And please pray for our buddy Steve Bannon. This ain't no cakewalk where he's at. And, he's a tough guy. We can't go see him, and I get that. He doesn't want anybody to write him letters. But I'd encourage people to pray for his safety, because if this is just the start of this nonsense. This is the start of this nonsense. And this is what they're doing with a Republican majority. Can you imagine what they're going to do with a Democrat majority? We might as well lock it up. They will tax us, regulate us, and bureaucrat us to non-existence. And I worry about the world I'm going to leave my wife and my daughter, and we all should, because this is our opportunity. This is going to be our last chance, I feel like, for forever, because the amount of ammo and the amount of media that they have stocked up and the backing they have stocked up from the left. And again, they're not going, I said before, they're not going to take us without a shot. Well, dadgummit, they took a shot a few days back on President Trump. We better wake up about what's going on in this country. We better take our dadgum country back. And election day is the day to do. Yeah. Put enough points on the board so they can't steal it. Thank you. Thank you, War Room.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Congressman. Great pleasure to have you today. Thanks.
Love the posse. See y'all.
Thank you, sir. We'll be back in just a moment.
In these crazy times, there is peace of mind in security. Security for our country, security for our leaders, and security for our families. But you're not financially secure if all your eggs are in one basket. Gold and silver are an excellent way to diversify your savings. They're a hedge against inflation. With Birch Gold Group, you can own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Secure your family's savings today. Text Bannon to 989898 and receive a free info kit on gold. Plus, this August only, Birch Gold is giving away free Trump silver coins with any purchase. This brand new one-of-a-kind silver coin features Trump boldly raising his fist in the moments after the attempt on his life. Don't miss your chance to own this special piece of history, a celebration of a leader dedicated to our security, preserved in the security of a precious metals coin. Secure your savings today and get your free Trump silver coins. Text Bannon to 989898 today. That's Bannon to the number 989898. You all recognize Jim Rickards as a regular guest and wise man of the War Room. His grasp of the intersection between geopolitics and capital markets is unmatched. His financial newsletter, Strategic Intelligence, is essential reading for anyone concerned about protecting your own wealth. As you've seen during his War Room appearances, Jim has a knack for making the complex simple. And every month, Strategic Intelligence cuts through the noise and delivers actionable financial guidance. Plus, War Room members get a free copy of Jim's The New Case for Gold. This is an amazing follow-up to Ron Paul's classic. And what makes Jim's book even more crucial is that he's not a gold bug. He'll help you understand gold's significance on the global stage as well as in your own portfolio. Go sign up now and claim your free book at our exclusive website, rickardswarroom.com. That's rickardswarroom.com.
All this nonsense, all this spin, they can't handle the truth.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back, War Room. It's a great pleasure to join you. Steve Bannon should be here, but he's not. I'm Brad Thayer, sitting in. Steve told us next man up, and so that's our motto, of course, in the War Room. All of us have got to work together to ensure that everything stays right on the right track in terms of while Steve is away. I'm very pleased to be joined with two regulars on the War Room, Colonel Derek Harvey and U.S. Navy Captain retired James Fanell, to give us a review of strategic events happening in the Middle East and in the Indo-Pacific. So much has been happening, of course, as a result of Biden administration weakness and the fact that nobody really knows who's in charge in the United States, with crises from Ukraine, the Russia-Ukraine war, the Middle East, and then, of course, China's hyper-aggressive actions against Japan, Taiwan, in the Philippines, elsewhere in the South China Sea, and against India and other states. It's nonstop action, of course, when you have such a hyper-aggressive state as China is. Colonel Harvey, the audience knows you very well. It's a great pleasure to have you join us this afternoon. I wondered, Derek, if you could take us through the most recent iteration, of course, of the struggle that Israel's had. It's been under attack from Iran and Iran's proxies now for most of the year, obviously, going back to October 7th of 2023 and the horrific terrorist attacks at that time, and then Iran's attacks in April. And then, of course, it's gotten a lot hotter with Hezbollah. So, Colonel Harvey, I'll toss it to you, sir, for your reflections on what Israel and Hezbollah are doing with Iran operating in the background. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And it's great to be on a panel here with Jim. Jim's a stellar scholar on China and one of our best national security experts in the country. So it's great to be on here with him, too. First of all, about the Hezbollah attacks and the violence over the weekend, I think I want to put that in context. Israel, responded preemptively to good intelligence, knowing exactly what was going to be developing with a strike by Hezbollah, guided, directed, supported, and financed by Iran. This is a real challenge in the north because you're dealing with basically a minor military power there with, upwards of 150,000 missiles, rockets, and other capabilities that can impact the north. And I want to step back. That happened, and we're in a little bit of a pause. But in context, this is part of a larger, I call it a strangulation strategy by Iran being orchestrated through its proxies in Yemen with the Houthis, in Gaza with Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas and Hezbollah, and of course support from other groups, be they Shia militias that come over from Iraq or elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So this war hasn't gone on for much longer than Israel is used to, and that's part of a prolongation strategy to wear down the Israeli population and their economy, and to foster further isolation of Israel, in the international community. And so that military campaign is succeeding. And unfortunately, our administration has done everything in its power to ensure that Israel is restrained while doing very little. In fact, actually providing more financial support and not enforcing sanctions and being as hard as they could on Iran and Hamas and others. And in fact, we offered $9 billion in reconstruction aid in that big $95 billion package. And, many of us believe that, an Israeli strategic victory serving Israelis' interests will rebound to the favor of U.S. broader strategic and economic interests in the region. Let's set that aside. The larger strategy, internationally, the Iranians and the others are working in the World Health Organization, the UN, UNRWA, the EU capitals, etc., to support isolating and undermining Israel. Mm-hmm. The International Court at The Hague has indicted leaders there. The administration here has put sanctions on elected Israeli leaders and is considering more. So that's not a friend and an ally. And we're doing more against Israel than against Iran in many ways. Thirdly, there's the political warfare that's going on that's financed by the left, by Marxists and, the Muslim Brotherhood community on our universities, in our capitals, targeting, Israeli support, trying to undermine the, support for Israel and Jews in Western and American capitals in Brazil and elsewhere. And unfortunately, that has had a great deal of success and not a lot of pushback. And then economically, all these things impact the ability of the Israeli economy to support the war effort. The northern part of the country has, had 250,000 refugees move farther in the country. It impacts their economy there. The war effort costs them a great deal. And then the lack of investment and continued economic activity, in normal business, trade, investment, et cetera, because of, these pressures in the United States and elsewhere, which undermines Israel. And so there's a lot of forces at play that are hindering Israel at this point. And I think I'll leave it.
Certainly. Well, thank you, Derek. That's excellent. And thank you for that tour of the horizon of the pressures that are operating on them. And that allows the audience to understand really what they're facing right now. Captain Fanell, you and I write together weekly for the American Greatness and published a few books, and maybe we'll have some more up our sleeves. But Jim Fanell, could you give us really a review of the actions that are taking place now in the Indo-Pacific as a result of the People's Republic of China's aggression against the Philippines, Taiwan, and Japan? Jim, over to you.
Well, first of all, Brad, it's I'm glad that you referenced Steve Bannon. He's in prison right now, so we are the next men up, and we will continue to have next men up no matter what they throw at us. So that's first. Second, congratulations to you for being recognized to be able to lead the War Room here tonight. This is your inaugural night, and so thank you to you, and congratulations. And then third, it's always a pleasure to work with Derek. He is really an expert in the Middle East and somebody that I greatly respect, and I'm honored to be on the show with him. Regarding the events in the Pacific and the Indo-Pacific, I think the biggest news to talk about is the fact that right now, for the first time in basically 23 years, the United States does not have a carrier strike group or a U.S. aircraft carrier operating in the Indo-Pacific region. The Biden-Harris regime, and I use the word regime on purpose, ordered the USS Abraham Lincoln to make best speed across the Pacific through the South China Sea and out into the Central Command area of responsibility. And it is there now, along with the other West Coast carrier, the Teddy Roosevelt, operating in the Gulf of Oman, or the GU as we used to call it, and maybe they still do. So we have all of our carriers, 11 aircraft carriers. We've got about half of them at sea right now on the East Coast and the two in the Gulf of Oman. But we don't have any in the Indo-Pacific, right at a time that China, as you mentioned, is bullying and threatening our treaty allies. The first treaty ally is the Republic of the Philippines, and there's been about a 6-month surge in effort by the People's Republic of China to basically take control of the 9-dash line, which is that 9 dashes that they instituted back in the 50s and updated in the 70s. It basically claims 80% of the South China Sea. And so what they are doing now is essentially telling the Republic of the Philippines, who's being led by their President Marcos, who's more pro-America, restoring the Philippines back to its kind of historic security alliance with America after the Duterte regime with President Duterte. And Beijing doesn't like that. And so they are now pressurizing the Philippines, specifically this on Monday, the 26th of August at Sabina Shoal, where they prevented the Filipinos from resupplying one of their Coast Guard cutters that was at anchorage at Sabina Shoal with 2 other smaller rapid response vessels, MRRVs. And these 2 MRRVs, or rapid response vessels, went out there to bring them food, water, and even some ice cream that the local Coast Guard commander wanted to provide to the sailors on that ship. And the Chinese blocked this with 3 PLA Navy warships, 6 Coast Guard cutters, and at least 31 People's Armed Forces maritime militia vessels, along with a fishing fleet. So they essentially block this resupply, and China has been doing this at Second Thomas Shoal and other areas where the Philippines have outposts in the South China Sea over the last 2 months specifically. And the Chinese have told them, you will not be allowed to resupply any of your outposts in our waters, the Chinese waters of the South China Sea, unless you first tell us what you're going to do and request our permission. Obviously, the Republic of the Philippines has no intention of doing that. That would be giving up their sovereignty. So we're in a bad situation with this happening. And the United States has, in my opinion, we've been lagging, and now sending the carrier away sends another signal to Beijing that we're really not interested, as the Indo-Pacific and specifically the South China Sea and other areas is our top priority, or is equally as concerning as what's happening in the Middle East, as Derek described. Concurrently, also on the 26th, Monday, the 26th of August, the Chinese flew a Y-9 maritime reconnaissance aircraft, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft through the Danzhou Islands, which is at the entrance of the southern entrance of the Tsushima Strait and the East China Sea that goes up into the Sea of Japan. They flew through that area for the first time ever. It's the first time ever that PLA aircraft had flown through the territorial waters of Japan. That means within 12 nautical miles of their landmass. It wasn't a mistake by the pilots. They're very good. They know what they're doing. And this is another signal, essentially telling Japan that we're not going to put up with anything from you either. And the third signal was to the U.S., who had the next day our national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, traveling to China, who is there right now as we're talking, conducting another one of its series of quote-unquote clandestine meetings that the Financial Times talked about this week between Wang Yi, the foreign minister of China, and Jake Sullivan, our national security advisor. Essentially, as we've discussed in our book and on our articles, this is a form of neo-engagement, of return to the engagement policies that our governments followed for 40-plus years that have been disastrous for American national security. And Jake Sullivan went to China, and the day before he arrived, the Chinese made sure to poke our ally in the Philippines and poke our ally in Japan. So this is all happening.
Yeah.
In Japan. So this is all happening at the same time while Sullivan's there, and they're talking about, they're really interested in the next 6 months of America and what our national security will be and where we're at. So essentially, Sullivan is going over there to essentially, like Mark Milley did, to tell his Chinese counterparts, we'll let you know if anything untoward happens with the November 5th election. So we're seeing a general dismantlement of America's interest in the Indo-Pacific in favor or relinquishing this to the People's Republic of China, and specifically the Chinese Communist Party. And it's really, really disheartening to see this, especially at the time when our Navy is under such duress. There was a report this week that said that up to 17 of our 80 military Sealift Command vessels were going to be taken offline because of lack of personnel, experienced mariners that could be put on these ships. And this is having cascading effects on other U.S. Navy operations, like our carriers or other areas like special warfare and other things of that nature. So,
yes,
watching
a huge problem.
Our general national security capabilities.
Colonel Harvey, it seems Captain Fanell just illuminated, of course, how the United States is not living up to its obligations with the Philippines. And you observed, of course, that against Israel, we're facing the same situation. What would you see, Colonel Harvey, in the weeks ahead? Iran has not yet retaliated. If we recall, in April, when Israel, I believe, killed 2 generals, Iranian generals, so Iran waited about 2 weeks to retaliate. Do you see something along those lines in this instance, Colonel Harvey, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I believe that Tehran sees real advantages in stringing this out and creating tension and uncertainty for Israel, but also for the region. And that puts additional pressure and stress, not just on the Israeli Defense Forces, but, as Jim pointed out, look at how the U.S. has repostured to the region. And we've got, the aircraft carriers there. And the question would be, what are they doing? We see the Houthis setting aflame an oil tanker, coming up towards the Suez Canal. There's been very little done in actuality for consequences against the Houthis or Iran for what they are doing to interfere with international shipping, for example. And, if we're going to redeploy these forces, my question is, what are they doing? And, what instructions do they have? How long are they going to be committed there? Because I see Tehran wanting to string this out for some time, and they're going to put their proxies first. And they're fine with letting Arabs die for their ideological cause anyway. But at some point, to get to the nub of your question, I think they are going to strike. And it will be a coordinated strike on multiple fronts: Houthis, Hezbollah, from Gaza, whatever they can muster, and then from Iran itself, and perhaps some international strike also. Whether it's going to be a targeting of an embassy or American shipping or some other allied shipping, coordinated event. The question is, what are we communicating? Have we communicated any red lines? Is this administration believable in any way? Because they continue to talk down the unity government of Israel. They continue to restrict and, resupply the purchase of equipment. They continue to restrict the flow of intelligence that Israel could use for its purposes. And they continue to hesitate about using action against those that are striking international shipping, for example. So who's running it, as Jim mentioned and you mentioned? If Jake Sullivan is in China, we have an incapacitated, non-present president who's sitting on the beach most of the time, doesn't even come to Afghanistan ceremonies at the Arlington Cemetery. Who's running the show? It's clearly not the Secretary of Defense. Clearly, it doesn't
Indeed,
look like
Colonel Harvey. It's American leadership is key for stability in international politics and to honor our commitments worldwide, as well as for security for the American people. And when nobody knows who the president is and who's in charge, our allies take notice of that, as our adversaries, our enemies, do as well. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts on the world, if you will, in the Middle East, of course, and the Indo-Pacific this afternoon. We greatly appreciate it. And we want to just, of course, underscore aircraft carriers are precious resources. And if there's not one in the Pacific area, that introduces a window of vulnerability. And it's a key political symbol. Thanks very much indeed. See you next time.